Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. June is given over to the budget debate. And so our guest this week is the Minister of State for Finance and Grand Bahama, Senator the Honorable Kwasi Thompson. Minister, welcome again to A Closer Look.
Ace, thank you. It is good to be back with you. Good to be back in the front of the Bahamas. Wonderful.
Great, because as I said, you're the man in finance, well, the Minister of State, and the budget laid by the Prime Minister. And whatever else happens, the plans and initiatives coming out of that budget is going to color whatever happens for the rest of the fiscal year.
Absolutely.
Let's start with that. Talk to me about plans coming out of that budget.
So this is a very, very important budget. We are coming out of the two crises. We're coming out of Dorian, and we're coming out of COVID. And budgets, especially in the Bahamas, they give you your priorities for the next fiscal year. And they set the tone, they set your plans for the next fiscal year. And given where we are in our recovery, this is probably one of the most important budgets that we've ever have to go through. So we've taken the time to put in place this budget. This budget is called the Accelerated Bahamas Recovery Plan. And this budget really focuses on economic growth. It focuses on having a plan and a strategy on how we take the country from coming out of COVID to now accelerating our economic growth. And that's one of our key priorities. And we've put in place a very simple but very clear plan on how we want to achieve this economic growth. There are 7 pillars of this plan, and we want the public to be completely aware of these 7 pillars. Those 7 pillars drive our planning. It will drive our priorities. It will drive how we spend. It will drive how we adjust our taxes, how we put in place our concessions. And so those 7 pillars are all geared towards how do we grow and how do we accelerate growth in our economy.
Going to let you get to those 7 pillars. I think a lot of people forget, or maybe some don't know for some reason, that the economy was growing before COVID and Dorian just put a damp on what was happening here.
Well, if we looked at our fiscal terms in terms of what was happening in 2019 and going into 2020, we really had seen modest economic growth. And it was modest economic growth, but it was still the largest amount of economic growth that we have seen since our Great Recession. But nevertheless, we were hit with Dorian and we were hit with COVID, and that really caused a huge turnaround in terms of events, not just for the Bahamas, but a turnaround in events for the entire world. And it put us in a position now where we have to look at how do we see the opportunities in the crisis that we are facing. It doesn't mean that you panic, but what it does mean is that you plan and you look for those opportunities in those crises. And that's why we've sort of focused on those pillars to take us through and to keep us focused in terms of making sure that we grow the economy. And let me just tell you a little bit about those pillars, and then we can get into some of the details with respect to the pillars. And we want the public really to be aware that there's a plan, a document that really speaks to the pillars. It speaks to what is in the budget and how do we focus those the concessions. How do we focus what we're going to pay, our expenses, our revenue. How do we all focus those things in terms of the economic growth?
And I'm going to let you get to the pillars. I keep saying that, but I will after this. Some people believe that you, the government, hasn't communicated the serious position that we may be in. You haven't communicated that enough. How do you respond to that?
Well, one of the things that we've done, and this government I think has been very, very transparent in doing, is ensuring that we let the public know where we are. So, for example, we have a Fiscal Responsibility Act that speaks to what we now have to tell the public. We have to publish a fiscal responsibility or fiscal strategy report. The government did that. In the fiscal strategy report, it fully speaks to our position. It spoke to our revenue position, it spoke to our expenses, it spoke to the deficit. Not only that, but we have quarterly reports that now come out. And those quarterly reports also speak to what our fiscal position is. In fact, the public debate about where we are is only as a result of the information that the Ministry of Finance has actually been putting out. People now know how much we've borrowed. They now know what the deficit is. They now know what our revenue is. They now know what our revenue projections are. Yeah. They know that now because we have been transparent and we have put in place those mechanisms. Another thing that we've been able to do is to use communication mechanisms. So we've used social media. We've used our website. This government has put in place a budget website, which we've never seen before, but a budget website that clearly articulates our position, clearly articulates our expenses, our revenue, what our projections are, how we base those things. It clearly articulates our concessions, all those tax breaks, tax benefits, and those revenue enhancement initiatives as well, so the public can see them. And I think never before has the public debate been so intense, and it has been that intense because the information now is available to the public.
Tell me about these pillars in the...
So the pillars, as I said, are 7 pillars, and they are geared again, and I want to keep focusing on this. They are geared towards economic growth. They are geared towards our plan for economic growth. The first one really is job creation. We know that COVID and Dorian has caused a huge problem when it comes to unemployment. And so one of the things we wanted to focus on was how do we put in place mechanisms that will assist when it comes to creating employment. But we had to do something different. We can't just rely on the old system where the government says we're going to take a large sum of money and we can hire a lot of people, and we believe that that's going to help when it comes to unemployment. What we wanted to do was to shift, and we wanted to try and create incentives that would help the private sector to create sustainable employment, because that's what we want. We don't want just a quick fix that's going to get a few people hired and then we don't know how to sustain that. But what we want to do is put in place the incentives that are going to give the private sector the ability to hire persons and give them the motivation to hire people. So what we did was, you are now able, as of July 1st, you are now going to be able to apply for a VAT credit in the amount of up to $400 per employee, and that is per new employee that you would bring on after the 1st of July. So it can't be for your existing employees, but it is for those who you bring on new. And it is up to 10 employees. And so it's up to 10, up to $400 per employee, and that is a VAT credit. So the monies that you would have normally paid in VAT and paid to the Department of Inland Revenue, you can keep that. And you can keep that and use that to pay for the new employees that you are going to bring on.
We're going to continue, but we got to take this break. We're speaking with Minister of State for Finance, Senator the Honorable Kwasi Thompson. Will be back after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold speaking with Minister Kwasi Thompson. We're talking about the budget. you're talking about job creation. We just in the first pillar, and we got 6 more to go.
Absolutely. So, and that's actually the most important one when it comes to job creation. But in addition to the VAT credit program, we also wanted to give small businesses the same kind of incentives that the larger developments get, which is a duty-free concession when it comes to your startup or your expansion. So if you're a small, medium-sized business and you want to get started or you want to expand, all of those things that are necessary, so the equipment, any other things that is necessary, building materials, those things that are necessary for you to build or expand, all of that you will be able to apply to the Ministry of Finance and get a duty-free concession with respect to that as well. And then one of the other things that's very important, especially for the startups, is you can bring in your first stock duty-free. Okay. And that, again, is an incentive to help people in terms of getting started, moving. What we want is to see greater economic activity. The more economic activity we can get, the more economic growth we can get. And we have to grow our way out of this problem. Some people say tax, we say no. We have to grow our way out of this. The second pillar really is, again, focusing on small business development. This government has done more for small businesses in the last 3-4 years, we believe, than any other government has done. We have been, when you look at the business continuity loans, we've had about $44 million gone into helping businesses just to maintain their employment during these periods of time. Over $50 million has gone into loans and gone into grants to help small businesses. But we want to continue that in this budget. So we see an allocation of $35 million that will go towards helping small businesses get started and develop. And then we see another $4 million that is in the development bank, the Bahamas Development Bank, again, to help small businesses get started. The third pillar, healthcare.
Okay.
Healthcare is extremely important. And some may question, well, what does healthcare have to do with economic growth? Well, COVID has taught us that the stronger our health infrastructure is, the more we will be able to withstand things like COVID. And the more we can withstand it, the more we can stay open. The more we can stay open, the more we will be able to have our economic growth and continue. So this budget, you will see where we are putting in place about $70 million that is going to be invested into the Princess Margaret Hospital, again, to expand and strengthen our health infrastructure. Something that is very, very important to me is in Grand Bahama, we have an allocation of $19 million that goes to get us started in the Rand Memorial 4-story tower, which is hugely important, especially when it comes to looking at post-Dorian, because we know that that area was a flood zone. And so we want to move it now to where it is now 4 stories so that we will not have to go through the same kinds of challenges that we had before. We are expanding when it comes to the national health insurance, and then something that's dear to the Prime Minister is his telemedicine infrastructure as well.
Which he started back in 2007, I think.
When he first was Minister of Health at the time. Our next pillar, again, after healthcare really is tourism development. It's our bread and butter. And yes, we must look at ways upon which we must diversify the economy, but then tourism is the bread and butter. So we must be innovative when it comes to how we build back and how we develop our tourism product. So we see things like home porting, and we are putting in place those necessary concessions and so on to advance that home porting. We saw yesterday where the first ship came in, and it has huge promise and potential for not just Nassau, but the Family Islands, and in particular for me, in Grand Bahama, where a lot of the provisioning of these ships are going to be taking place. So that has really spin-off effects when it comes to employment, when it comes to private sector in Grand Bahama. So we're very much looking forward to that. And then one other important point that was put in our tourism with respect to the budget is an allocation of $2 million that is for businesses and persons who wish to get into the vacation home rental market. So you can apply now that if you want to upgrade your apartment, you want to upgrade your condo, you want to upgrade this, in order to get into that vacation home market, you can now apply for funding so that you can be assisted in getting that together as well. Again, something that's different, new, innovative, and creating ownership and economic growth for us here in the Bahamas. The next thing we have is public-private sector investment. If we want economic growth, we have to look at how do we advance our public infrastructure? How do we continue to build our roads? How do we continue to build our airports? How do we continue to do our harbors and those kinds of infrastructure, our schools? So in this budget, you will see specific allocations for our Family Island airport developments. You will see an allocation for schools, and again, that's close to me. You will see an allocation for $1.9 million for a school in the East End area where the schools were destroyed. And so again, infrastructure is important. But we also want to focus on the foreign direct investment. And so you will see a new concept called Invest Bahamas, where we are creating a whole new mechanism to receive persons who come in and who want to invest in the Bahamas, but also a new marketing tool that we are now going to go out into the world and seek new investments and target new investments to come into the Bahamas. And then finally, we have digitization, innovation, and then fiscal responsibility. And later on, we want to, if we have time to really get into that whole innovation and digitization, which again is a passion for me. We are doing lots of things in that space, and so we want to be able to focus on that as well.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. But before we get to that, just before we get to that, go back to Invest Bahamas, because you're sounding like Invest Bahamas is going to do what BIA was supposed to be doing. What's the difference between the two of them?
Invest Bahamas takes the BIA, Bahamas Investment Authority, and it just builds on it and takes it to a whole nother level. Invest Bahamas, BIA really is a very good tool when it comes to how do we receive those applications, how do we assess them, and then how do we get them approved. But the Invest Bahamas takes it to another level. It meshes those things when it comes to marketing, those things when it comes to actually going out and targeting investments. So for example, we don't want to just sit back and wait and see who comes to invest, but we want to actually go out into the world. We want to target technology companies. We want to target light manufacturing. We want to target all of those areas that build on the tourism product. We want to target our agriculture and our farming. So we want to be able to go out into the world, and that's really what Invest Bahamas is targeted to do.
So you're talking about some new trade missions now?
Absolutely.
From originating here in the
Because
Bahamas.
if we want, again, for new foreign direct investment, we cannot just sit back and wait and hope that things come. But we have to be proactive in going out into the world and marketing ourselves as not just a good place to come and vacation, but we have to now market ourselves as a good place to do business and a good place to invest. And also Invest Bahamas is focused on putting those investments on a fast track, because we cannot get them bogged down. And unfortunately, we've had too much of that, where they've been bogged down in red tape. And this Invest Bahamas, again, will push them through, hopefully push them past the red tape and get them the red carpet treatment.
Yeah, it needs to get to the red carpet. We're speaking with Minister of State for Finance, the Honorable Kwasi Thompson. Take this break and we'll be back after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. I'm Anthony Newbold, speaking with Minister Kwasi Thompson. As we're talking about all this, talk to me about the family islands before our time runs away with
Oh,
us.
that's a very, very special component in this budget. So what we wanted to do was to create really a tax-free zone. One of the things that we did was to have a special economic recovery zone in Grand Bahama and Abaco. And by the way, we are extending those concessions in that special economic zone for Grand Bahama and Abaco. That's in this budget as well. But we wanted to take it to another level when it came to especially those southern family islands. Again, geared towards economic growth. But we want to do it in the areas where they need it the most. And so we want to encourage more people to do business in those family islands. We want to encourage people from Nassau and Grand Bahama and Abaco also to expand into those family islands. So for the concessions, you are now able to apply for VAT-free and customs duty-free on those items when it comes to what you need to do to either start a business or even build a home. But we want economic activity in those family islands. So we are making them tax-free when it comes to VAT and customs duty-free. We're also doing concessions for business license and for real property tax. Again, we want to make it easy for people to do business. We want more, and we want to motivate them. Look, now is the time for me to get started with the business. Now is the time for me to expand. Now is the time for me to put on that extra part on my house, because we want that to generate that economic activity. But also, when it comes to land sales. So a part of this plan is that if you have a property transaction, you're selling a piece of property or buying a piece of property in those southern islands, below 500,000, because again, we're trying to help those ordinary Bahamians who have those kinds of transactions. So if you are below 500,000, you can have and have that transaction now VAT and stamp duty free. So that saves you 10%.
Yes.
That 10% now, you can go ahead and put that into the project itself.
Whatever, yeah.
And you know, what we are also hearing is that banks were requiring people, even though you had first-time homeowners exemption, banks were requiring people to come up with that stamp duty, put it in the bank, show them that you have it. But now, because you have this exemption, it now makes it a whole lot easier, because you don't have to come up with that money. You don't have to put it in the bank, because it is completely free when it comes to the transaction in those areas. Again, and I want to just be focused in terms of those islands: Ragged Island, San Salvador, Rum Key, Long Island, Maguana, Inagua, Crooked Island, Acklands, Long Key, and then one of the areas again that's important to me is Andros. So we want to focus on those areas, and we want people again to be motivated, stimulated. We want to accelerate the economic growth in those areas. There are some people who say that we should tax more, and that's how you then decrease your deficit. Well, we say no, you cannot tax your way out of this, especially coming out of COVID and coming out of Dorian. So what we want to do is accelerate the growth, accelerate the plans, and we want to make that atmosphere dynamic so that persons will be motivated to grow and economically grow.
You got to talk about digitization, but before you do that, my land is on Cat Island. I didn't hear you say anything about Cat Island.
Well, Cat Island is included in that southern zone.
Yeah, well, I got to hear that.
Yes, Cat Island is included. As again, Ragged Island, San Salvador, Rum Key, Cat Island, Long Island, Maguana, Inagua, Crooked Island, Acklands, Long Key, and Andros.
Good. Talk to me now about digitization this last couple of minutes we have with the show.
Ace, that is our future for this country. That is the future. And digitization and innovation is what this country needs to continue to focus on. This government has had a plan when it comes to how we bring on more online services. We've been able to launch our mygateway.gov.bs website, Again, now that allows you to apply online for your driver's license. We've expanded it to the police certificate, or we've expanded it to e-passports. We've expanded it to the birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, and then there are some other new ones that came on stream as well. It has been hugely successful. We have probably about 8,000 people now who've already signed up for it. We have well over 3,000 people who have been transacting and who've been able to get their services as a result of it. We have social services who are now moving ahead with their online application process, which again is going to help the entire community. We have e-cabinet that has now started, where all of the cabinet ministers now, all they need to do is carry their computer. They can access their cabinet papers anywhere in the world using their devices, and it makes it more efficient when it comes to doing our digitization and when it comes to doing our paperless initiatives. We're going to have 40. Our target is to have 40 more online applications and services for the government during this year. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're focusing on cybersecurity. We are enhancing our cybersecurity. And so this is really where the focus is going to be on digitization. We are very excited about it. It is for the betterment and better service of our public.
And you're going to commit to, in the front of all these people that you're going to come back, because I know you got a lot of stuff you didn't talk about, but you're going to have to come back and talk to us some more about what you're doing.
Always would welcome that. Always welcome that.
Okay, and we're going to invite you. Thank you again for watching A Closer Look. Remember, you can also see us on YouTube and on Facebook.